I never liked James and Carol. I tolerated them for Andrew's sake. When we got married, I knew I wasn't marrying just him. I was marrying into his family, and his parents came with a set of rules I never agreed to. They were loud, opinionated, and obsessed with appearances. From day one, they treated me like a temporary accessory to their son's life, not a permanent fixture. James wore Rolex watches and leased cars he couldn't afford. Carol had her Botox appointments scheduled with more dedication than most people plan medical checkups. They lived in a $1.2 million house in Bellevue, constantly renovated to stay market competitive, as they called it. That same house had a kitchen island imported from Italy and a wine fridge more expensive than my entire car. Andrew always shrugged it off. That's just how they are, he'd say. They're harmless. He was wrong. It started with a phone call. I was folding laundry when Andrew walked into the bedroom, phone in hand, his face drained of color. My parents are losing the house, he said. They can't pay the mortgage anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at him. What happened? They took out a second mortgage to finish the backyard project, the patio and the hot tub, and then invested part of that money in some kind of crypto startup. He exhaled sharply. It collapsed. Now they're behind on payments, and the bank's coming for the house. I didn't say anything. We both knew this was coming. It was only a matter of time before the reality of their lifestyle caught up with them. They need a place to stay. Just temporarily, he added quickly. I crossed my arms. Define temporary. Couple of months. 3 max. I stared at him. No. Not unless we set rules. Boundaries. Privacy. And it has to be a limited stay, not some open-ended arrangement where they take over our house. I know, he said, nodding. I'll talk to them. They'll respect it. They didn't. James and Carol arrived 2 weeks later, bringing 6 oversized suitcases, a box of decorative pillows, and an espresso machine that looked like it belonged in a commercial coffee shop. They moved into the guest suite downstairs, which I had decorated myself, hoping to turn it into a quiet reading nook. Instead, it became their new empire. The first week, Carol complained about the water pressure in the shower, the firmness of the guest bed, and the outdated lighting. James criticized our thermostat settings and reset the air conditioning schedule so the house would stay at what he called human temperatures. It ran 24/7 even when we were out. Our electricity bill doubled. By the second week, Carol was reorganizing our kitchen. I just think it makes more sense to keep the spices near the stove, she said. And I moved your baking pans to that bottom cabinet, easier access. I was seething. I had organized that kitchen over 3 years. She undid it in a morning. James started using my home office when I was at work. I only found out because I came home early one Friday and found him on a Zoom call in my chair. Just using it for a quick meeting, he said, not even bothering to mute himself. You weren't using it anyway. By the 3rd week, I stopped feeling like a homeowner. They spread through the house like invasive plants. Carol took over the laundry. Not in a helpful way. She just didn't like the way I folded towels. James began hosting quick drinks with his former coworkers in our backyard. One of those nights, they stayed until 2 a.m., blasting music and laughing like they were at a beach resort. I had to be up at 6 for work. Andrew was caught in the middle, but instead of taking a firm stance, he kept trying to play mediator. Let's just keep the peace, he said. It's only for a little while. That little while turned into 6 weeks. Then 8. One day I came home to find that Carol had thrown away our living room curtains. They were dusty and dated, she said. I ordered some new ones online, my treat. She bought mustard yellow velvet drapes that made the room look like a 1970s casino lounge. That night, I told Andrew, they have to go. He looked exhausted. Where would they go? They can't afford rent. They're still trying to sell the house. It hasn't even gotten an offer. I said, that's not my problem. He didn't speak for a full minute. Then finally, he said, just give it a couple more weeks. Then came the money issue. I noticed small charges on our joint card. First, a $78 charge at a boutique grocery store we never shopped at. Then a $300 bill from a spa in Bellevue. I asked Andrew. He didn't recognize them either. I checked the rest of the statements and found over $2,000 in charges, all during the time his parents had been with us. When I confronted them, Carol acted offended. I thought Andrew said we could use the card for emergencies. Carol, I said, trying to keep my voice level, what part of a facial counts as an emergency? James chimed in, don't worry, we'll pay you back. They didn't. The real tipping point happened when I got home early from work one Wednesday. I walked into the kitchen and heard Carol on the phone in the living room, talking to someone, her voice sharp, annoyed. Yes, we're staying at our son's house, she said. But this isn't permanent. Megan will get over it. She's just territorial. Honestly, I'm surprised Andrew married someone so controlling. I didn't walk into the room. I just stood there listening. She went on. She's sweet to his face, but everything here is hers. Her furniture, her kitchen, her rules. I don't think she understands that once you're married, it's a shared life, not just her kingdom. I waited until she hung up. Then I walked in. She jumped a little when she saw me. Interesting call, I said. She stammered something about a private conversation, but I didn't care anymore. I told Andrew that night. He didn't say much. He just sat on the bed, his head in his hands. I'll talk to them, he said. But he didn't. Instead, things got worse. One morning, I opened the fridge and found a note taped to the shelf. Please do not store raw onions, they smell. Thanks, Carol. I found another note on the dryer. Towels need to be folded vertically. It saves space. Notes. Passive-aggressive notes. All over my house. I snapped. That night, I told Andrew I wanted them gone by the end of the month. No more delays. No more extensions. That's when he told me the worst part. They already listed our address as their mailing address, he said. They forwarded all their mail here. What? They needed a stable address for the credit companies. I didn't think it would be a big deal. I stared at him. Andrew, do you understand what that means? We're on the hook if they commit financial fraud. He looked sick. I didn't think they would. You didn't think they'd spend $2,000 on our card either, did you? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room alone, staring at the ugly yellow curtains, wondering how we got here. The next morning, I told Carol and James they had until the end of the week to leave. They didn't take it well. Carol cried. James yelled. Andrew begged me to reconsider. But I didn't. I called a locksmith the following Monday and had the locks changed. Andrew helped them pack. There were no goodbyes. No hugs. Just silence and slammed doors. And for the first time in months, the house was quiet again. But I could still feel them. Their presence, their tension, the damage they left behind. And Andrew? He never quite forgave me. It had been 4 weeks since I changed the locks. I thought we were done. I thought that part of our lives was over. But Andrew's parents didn't stay away for long. It started with a dinner invitation. Andrew said they just wanted to talk things out, maybe start over. He asked me nicely, the way he does when he knows I want to say no. Reluctantly, I agreed. They showed up that Sunday evening with 2 bottles of wine, a homemade quiche, and a matching set of apologies that felt like rehearsed lines from a play neither of them believed in. We made it through dinner with small talk and fake smiles. I kept my voice level and my expression unreadable. Carol complimented my shoes. James joked about retirement. It felt like a hostage negotiation with hors d'oeuvres. I thought that would be it. A final act of civility before we went our separate ways. Instead, the visit started. First it was a weekend brunch, they happened to be in the area. Then it was Carol dropping by on a Tuesday afternoon with just a few groceries for you two. James borrowed Andrew's tools and forgot to return them for 3 weeks. Then they started showing up unannounced. Every few days they'd swing by, walk in like they still lived there, and treat our house like a community center. Carol stopped knocking. She'd walk in, criticize the dishes in the sink, open the fridge, and offer unsolicited advice. You know, the produce goes bad faster if it's near the back. Oh, and I moved the almond milk to the top shelf. That's where dairy substitutes should go. It didn't stop there. The criticism started small, then snowballed. You really should wipe down the baseboards more often, she said once while inspecting the hallway. Dust builds up quickly. It's not your fault, some people just aren't naturally tidy. Another time, she looked at me across the kitchen island and said, You look tired, Megan. Are you getting enough sleep? Or maybe you're just not eating enough protein. And then the kitchen. One Thursday, I came home and found Carol in my kitchen. She had the cabinet doors open, the silverware drawer emptied onto the counter, and a tape measure in her hand. What the hell are you doing? She didn't even flinch. Your layout is all wrong. I'm just mapping it out for a better configuration. You're wasting space with this corner unit, and that drawer sticks. It's probably off track. I'll have a contractor come in for a quick consult. I stood there in disbelief. No, you're not touching my kitchen. She raised an eyebrow. I'm just trying to help Megan. This place could use a woman's touch. A woman's touch? I repeated, my voice rising. Whose touch do you think set this entire house up? She shrugged and went back to measuring. I told Andrew that night. He just rubbed the back of his neck and said, She's just trying to be helpful. That's not helpful, I snapped. It's invasive. She acts like this house belongs to her. He didn't answer. A week later, Carol dropped by with a rug. A huge, obnoxious rug. Deep maroon with gold patterns that looked like a funeral parlor threw up on it. I thought it would warm up the living room, she said, unrolling it across our floor before I could even respond. That gray carpet you had was so bland. I wanted to scream. Instead, I waited for Andrew to get home. She brought a rug, I said. He looked at it and shrugged. It's not that bad. That was his response to everything lately. Not that bad. Not worth fighting over. Not a big deal. I started keeping notes. Dates, times, what she said, what she moved. I needed to remind myself I wasn't overreacting. Then came the comment that nearly broke me. I came home early one evening after a meeting got canceled. I didn't announce I was back. I walked in through the garage, thinking I'd surprise Andrew with takeout. As I walked through the hallway, I heard voices in the living room. Carol and her friend, someone I didn't know, maybe from her church group. Their backs were to me. I stopped just short of the hallway. Carol was saying, I don't understand what he sees in her. She's not even that pretty. And she's uptight. Always acting like she's above everyone else. Her friend murmured something I couldn't catch. Carol laughed. I mean, come on. Look at her. No style, no warmth, no charisma. She's probably great with spreadsheets, though. Andrew could have done so much better. My hands clenched around the bag of takeout. I backed away before they saw me. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just went upstairs and waited. That night, I told Andrew exactly what I'd heard. He looked uncomfortable, but instead of reacting like any decent husband would, he said, She didn't mean it. I stared at him. She said it. She meant it. She's just under a lot of stress. They're still dealing with the fallout of losing the house. And that gives her the right to call me ugly and uptight behind my back? She didn't say you were ugly. I couldn't believe it. You're defending her? I'm not defending anyone, he said. I'm just saying she's your elder, and maybe you misheard. I didn't mishear anything. He didn't speak after that. Just got up and left the room. The next day, Carol dropped off extra lasagna and rearranged my spice rack again. That weekend, I invited my sister Ellie over, just to have someone on my side in the house. Ellie has always had zero tolerance for bullshit. The moment Carol started commenting on the living room decor, Ellie cut her off. Oh, I didn't know you still lived here, she said. Carol's smile cracked for half a second. James showed up an hour later with his old friend Dawn, some guy in his 70s who smelled like pipe tobacco and referred to me as the little wife. They all made themselves at home, like it was their Sunday tradition. I stood in the kitchen, staring at my floor, covered with muddy boot prints. Ellie leaned in and whispered, "Why the hell are they here again?" I didn't know what to say. Because they'd turned Andrew against me? Because saying no had stopped working? Because somewhere along the line, I lost control of my own house? The final straw came when I was in the shower one morning. I heard voices downstairs again. I wrapped myself in a towel and peeked out the window. Carol's car. James's truck. Not again. I went downstairs, hair dripping, robe clutched tight. Carol and James were sitting at the dining table. James was reading a newspaper like it was 1985. Carol was sipping coffee from one of my favorite mugs. What are you doing here? Oh, Andrew invited us for breakfast, Carol said. Andrew was nowhere in sight. I walked to the fridge. Half the orange juice was gone. My almond milk container was empty. There was a new smell in the air. Perfume and cooked bacon, mixed with entitlement. I turned to Carol. Please leave. She blinked. Excuse me, you're not welcome here right now. I didn't agree to this. Andrew doesn't speak for both of us. James looked up from his paper. Don't be so dramatic, Megan. We're family. No, you're not. You're squatters in nice clothes. Silence. Then Carol stood up, offended as always. We'll go. They left. But not before she gave me one last look, a tight, pitiful smile. Like I was the one falling apart. When Andrew came home, I told him what happened. They can't just come and go as they please. This is my home too. I'm not asking for much. Just basic respect. Boundaries. He looked at me and said, "You didn't have to throw them out." I did, I said. Because you won't. He didn't say anything. He just left the room again. And in that silence, I realized something I'd been avoiding for weeks. It wasn't just them. It was him too. I was halfway through folding a load of laundry when I heard the sound of a moving truck outside. I stood at the window frozen, watching as James stepped down from the cab and waved up at the house like he owned the place. Carol emerged from the passenger side, sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, like she was managing a commercial relocation project. Then the doors of the truck rolled up. Boxes. Dozens of them. Some marked kitchens, some bedroom, and one with Carol's shoes scribbled in bright pink marker. I didn't move. I couldn't. I kept thinking maybe I'd misunderstood. Maybe they were helping someone else. Then I saw Andrew step out of the garage and walk toward them. He shook his dad's hand. That's when I knew. I walked downstairs slowly, heart pounding in my chest. The front door was open. I stood in the entryway as James and Carol began unloading boxes onto the front porch. What are you doing? I asked, voice sharp. Carol turned around, smiled faintly. Just getting settled in. We figured it was time to stop dancing around the inevitable. Inevitable? She gestured toward the boxes. We can't keep bouncing around. This is family property now. Family property? I echoed, stunned. Andrew stepped up behind me, his hands in his pockets. I was going to talk to you. You were going to talk to me after they moved in? I said, voice rising. Carol cut in. Megan, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We've tried to be respectful. No, you haven't, I snapped. You've tried to take over my house. James hoisted a box labeled study and pushed past me into the hallway without a word. I turned to Andrew. You let them do this? They need stability, he said quietly. They've been struggling. We had an agreement. No more staying here. No more drop-ins. You promised me. He looked at the floor. They don't have anywhere else. They had months to figure something out. This isn't temporary anymore. It's a takeover. Carol walked inside with a box and muttered, "This is why we never felt truly welcome here." I turned on her. You weren't welcome. You pushed your way in, and now you're dragging your whole life into my home. It's Andrew's home too, she snapped. I faced him again. You need to make a choice. Right now. Either they go today or I do. Andrew was silent. Carol set down the box and crossed her arms. Don't put him in that position, Megan. I didn't even look at her. I just kept my eyes on Andrew. Well, his jaw clenched. He looked out the window, then at the floor, then finally at me. I can't kick them out, he said. It felt like the ground beneath me dropped out. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked upstairs and started packing. In our bedroom, I pulled suitcases out from under the bed and filled them with the essentials. Clothes, toiletries, documents. I didn't bother with decor or dishes. I packed like I was evacuating, fast, focused, and done with sentimentality. Ellie came within the hour. I called her right after I started packing. She showed up in gym clothes and didn't ask a single question. Just started grabbing things and helping me carry them to the car. Carol watched from the hallway, arms crossed, mouth tight with judgment. Andrew stood at the foot of the stairs and said, "Can we at least talk about this?" I didn't stop moving. "No. We've talked. You chose." "Megan, I didn't choose anything." "You did. When you didn't say no. That was your choice." He didn't follow me out. I rented a one-bedroom apartment in downtown Seattle that same night. Fully furnished, short-term lease, $4,000 a month. It had floor-to-ceiling windows, cold polished concrete floors, and none of my memories attached to it. The leasing agent, a guy named Bryant, asked if I was new to the city. I told him no. Just escaping. The silence in that apartment was almost violent. No creaky stairs. No heavy footfalls from James. No perfume clouds following Carol into rooms. Just the hum of the fridge and my own breath. Ellie stayed with me for the first night. She brought Thai food and 2 bottles of wine. I barely ate. She said, "You're doing the right thing." I nodded. I couldn't speak. Over the next few days, the messages started. First from Andrew. "Can we meet to talk? I didn't mean to hurt you." They're only staying for a while. Then from Carol. She had the audacity to send a text that said, "We didn't expect such an extreme reaction. Family's about compromise." James didn't text. He sent a forwarded email. It was a property tax notice addressed to Andrew and me, with a highlighted note at the bottom. "We'd like to help manage this going forward." I blocked all 3 of them. But they didn't stop. I started receiving mail at the apartment that I hadn't redirected. A card from Carol, one of those overly sweet, passive-aggressive ones with roses on the front. Inside it said, "Homes change, but family remains. Let's be adults and figure this out." No signature. At work, I lost focus. My boss, Camille, asked if everything was okay. I told her the truth in a rushed blur. She put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Sometimes, walking away is the real fight." I filed for mail forwarding the next day. I didn't want to see another envelope with their handwriting on it. A week after I moved out, Bryant, the leasing agent, knocked on my apartment door. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said. "But there's a woman downstairs insisting she knows you. Says she's your mother-in-law." My stomach dropped. I walked down to the lobby and there was Carol, standing like she was waiting for a reservation. She had a small shopping bag in her hand. "What the hell are you doing here?" I wanted to talk face to face. "This is harassment." She stepped forward. "We were just trying to rebuild. You blindsided Andrew. You made him choose under pressure. He had all the time in the world. You're throwing away a marriage over a few boxes. It's not about boxes. It's about control. It's about you never respecting me or this house or this marriage." She paused, then held out the bag. "I brought your mother's china set. I thought maybe you left it behind by accident." I didn't. I turned around and walked back into the building. Bryant, now behind the front desk, watched me and mouthed, "Want me to call security?" "No," I said. "She won't be back." But I wasn't sure if I believed it. A few nights later, Andrew left a voicemail. He sounded tired, more broken than before. "I miss you. I don't know how to fix this. I just didn't want to lose them. I didn't think I'd lose you too." I didn't respond. Instead, I sat on the floor of my quiet apartment, surrounded by only the things I chose to bring. And I exhaled. For the first time in months, I didn't feel watched, judged, dismissed. I felt like myself again. But I also knew something had been shattered, something that wouldn't be repaired with wine, or therapy, or time. Because when someone lets others hurt you again and again, without ever stopping them, it doesn't matter how softly they say, "I'm sorry." It's already too late. The message came on a Wednesday. I was sitting on the couch in my new apartment, the one with the sterile gray walls and a coffee table that still had the price tag folded under the glass. The sun was setting, and I had just poured myself a glass of wine when my phone buzzed. Andrew. I stared at the name for a while. My finger hovered over ignore, but I swiped instead. It wasn't a call. It was a message. "I know I failed you. I know I let them into our home, into our life, and I didn't defend you when you needed me most. You were right to leave. I just wish I had listened before it got this far. I miss you. I've started therapy on my own this time. I've told them they can't come to the house anymore. It's not enough, I know, but I'm trying. I want to fix this. I love you. Please call me when you're ready." The message was long, emotional, raw in a way I hadn't seen from him in months. For a moment, I felt the tug, that old part of me that wanted to believe him, that wanted to believe love was enough to fix everything. But then I remembered all the times he had said, "It's not that bad," all the times he watched his parents trample over me and looked the other way. He let it happen. A text doesn't erase that. The next day, I went to work early. I still hadn't responded. Camille, my boss, had invited me to a team dinner that evening. She ran a tight-knit creative agency, mostly branding and product campaigns. I'd been with her team for 4 years. She was sharp, never raised her voice, but always seemed to know when something was wrong. When I walked into the office, she looked up from her laptop. "You look like you need a win," she said. I half smiled. "You're not wrong." The dinner was at a restaurant called Alta Downtown, dim lighting, high-end without being pretentious. The team drank wine, passed plates of roasted duck and handmade pasta. At some point during the meal, Camille introduced me to someone new. "This is Lex," she said, motioning to the man who had just arrived. He's consulting with us on the Brixwell campaign. He looked mid-30s. Tall, lean, wore a dark button-up and a watch with no brand name visible, the quiet kind of expensive. But what struck me most was how calm he seemed. Measured. Like nothing rattled him. He shook my hand and said, "I've heard your name more times than mine this week." I laughed. Genuinely, for the first time in what felt like forever. Over the next 2 hours, we ended up seated across from each other. We talked mostly about work, but also about music, podcasts, how Seattle traffic had become a nightmare again post-pandemic. He didn't ask about my relationship status, and I didn't offer it. For one night, it was nice to feel like I wasn't just someone's wife or someone's daughter-in-law or someone's punching bag. When I got home, I opened Andrew's message again. Then I put my phone down without replying. A few days later, a package arrived at my apartment. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. Inside was a hardcover photo album, our wedding photos. On top of the album was a sticky note in Andrew's handwriting. "I wanted you to have this, even if you never speak to me again." I didn't know whether to cry or burn it. I didn't do either. I put it on the shelf, spine facing inward. That night, I went for a walk. My new apartment was near Volunteer Park, and at dusk the air smelled like pine and pavement. I walked for nearly an hour, thinking about all the times I had justified my own unhappiness just to preserve someone else's comfort. I didn't owe Andrew anything. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Not even a response. Still, the part of me that wanted resolution kept playing his voice in my head, saying he missed me, that he was in therapy, that he had told them to stay away. It wasn't enough. Later that week, Ellie invited me over for drinks. Her apartment was chaos. 2 kids under 6, a labradoodle, and a dining table covered in construction paper. But it was warm, real, and safe in a way mine wasn't. I told her about Andrew's message. About Lex. She raised an eyebrow. "You're not even divorced and already flirting with hot consultants?" "I'm not flirting," I said. "We just talked." She gave me a look. "You deserve to talk to someone who doesn't make you feel like a ghost." I didn't say anything. Then, as she was opening a second bottle of wine, she said, "Did you hear about what happened at your old house?" I turned. "What?" "Carol tried to host a brunch there. Invited like 15 people. Sent out digital invites." I blinked. "What? When?" 3 days ago. One of her old neighbors forwarded it to me. I felt sick. Please tell me Andrew didn't let her. No. He canceled it. Sent out an email saying the event was unauthorized and apologized. My jaw tightened. "She still thinks it's her house," I said. Ellie nodded. "Some people don't recognize boundaries until they're slapped in the face with one." The next morning, I decided to stop wondering if Andrew would change. He might. He might not. But it wasn't my job to wait around and see. I made an appointment to change my last name back. Not legally, not yet. But I updated my email signature, my social handles, and told HR. It felt like shedding a skin I didn't want anymore. I went back to therapy, this time by myself. Dr. Miriam Lucas agreed to take me on individually. At our first solo session, she asked, "Do you want to reconcile?" I paused, then said, "I want to feel like myself again." That became the goal. I joined a morning Pilates class. The instructor, Brie, was 6 feet tall and swore constantly during class. She was exactly what I needed. I signed up for a 3-day branding workshop in Vancouver. Lex was there too. By coincidence, or maybe not. He bought me coffee the second morning. We talked about client psychology, digital identity, and the weirdness of hotel carpets. He never once asked about Andrew. One night, after we got back to Seattle, Lex texted me, "I know this is forward, but I'd like to take you to dinner. No agenda, no pressure. Just dinner. If that feels right." I stared at the message for 5 minutes, then typed, "Thank you. Not ready, but I'll let you know when I am." He replied almost instantly, "That's more than fair. I'll wait." It wasn't a love story. Not yet. But it was the first time in a long time that I felt seen. 2 weeks later, Andrew sent another message. This one said, "I filed to revoke the shared mailing address. I've told them they are no longer welcome unless invited. I understand why you left. I just hope this isn't the end." I didn't reply, because it was the end. Maybe not for him, but for me it was. The end of compromising. Of shrinking. Of making space for people who only ever made me feel small. That Sunday, I woke up late, made coffee, and sat on my balcony watching the sun move slowly across the skyline. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for the next disaster. I wasn't bracing for Carol's comments or Andrew's excuses. The peace was unfamiliar, but I was starting to like it. And even though I didn't know what came next, not yet, I knew it would be mine.